required for a system-to-system submission. One of the questions I often hear about grants.gov submissions is, well, when am I going to see the forms? And the answer is you really aren't going to see the forms in this case. This is not like filling out an Adobe Forms packet for a grants.gov opportunity. It is actually collecting all the information from all the pieces of this proposal from that proposal tab, this grants.gov tab, all the other ones you see on the screen, including the budget, and other pieces of information that are collected within this eDoc are collected so that it can be transmitted to grants.gov with the appropriate schemas, and you need never actually sit and fill out an SF424 R&R for this particular opportunity. The way that it works for the grants.gov opportunities is on this page is where you can look up against the grants.gov servers and find a test opportunity to add to the proposal. I have already added one, and you can see that here. I went and added a proposal opportunity through grants.gov. It brings forward the information about the opportunity ID and other information, including in the instruction links and the form schema. The submission details and the submission history are items that show up after the actual transmission of this proposal to grants.gov. So that's something that once a proposal is submitted, it actually comes back and refreshes this information into this tab so you can get the information like the confirmation number and information on validation and agency receipt, which is right now a chain of emails, but it'll come back in and put this information because it can check up against what's going on with the grants.gov server when a proposal is submitted. One of the other things it does is provides the names of the forms that are in the schema we added. So this particular test schema only has a few forms in it, and unfortunately that's what testing is like, is they throw 4 or 5 forms together in a packet and you test those 4 or 5 forms, but they're not necessarily related to what a proposal might look like in the real-time environment when you're actually submitting a proposal. So what this one has brought forward is a few forms. It automatically tells me which ones are mandatory, so I don't have a choice but to include, for instance, the SF424 R&R schema. I can choose whether or not to include these other forms. And when I do that, what the system will do with KC is include the validations against those forms if I decide that they should be included. One good example of why you would or wouldn't include one of these items is like an NIH proposal with a detailed versus a modular budget. If I had an NIH-specific program announcement listed here or a grants.gov opportunity, it would provide both the detailed budget form and the modular budget form, but you need only include one. So you would include one of those budgets and not the other, and that's a good example of where you would decide to opt out of one of the forms. But I'll go ahead and save these so that you can see some of the validations later. To talk a little bit about the print forms, once you're done with the proposal and you're ready to submit via grants.gov, you can actually generate a PDF of the form so you can see what it looks like after you're all done and before you're ready to submit. This is really unlike the current situation using Adobe Forms in grants.gov because you can't see what the proposal is going to look like at the end. But what you can do with KC is generate this PDF. To ease your mind, to print a copy if you need to, burn it to CD, or however you want to save that file. And what that looks like is this. So this here is a representative of a proposal that I created and submitted through the grants.gov test server last year. And what it basically does is take all the information that you'll see throughout the demo today and puts it in the right format and generates these style sheets of forms so that you can see exactly what your proposal looks like before it goes to the sponsor. So I'll just page through that really quickly. Any of these places where you see that I have just one page with a title is where an attachment would have gone for that thing. So like this other, and let me go through just a moment. As you can see, all these forms are properly filled out, has all the information that I entered for PIs and co-PIs, includes all the attachments that I previously put in, and it puts them in the right place so that you can not only check placements, but you can also check page limits, whether or not the forms look the way they should before you even submit via grants.gov. One of the really nice things about KC, in my opinion. moving past grants.gov submission, for all proposals there's also this key personnel tab where you can add the PIs, co-PIs, and key personnel if there are any. I went ahead and added a PI and a co-PI to this proposal, and it does a couple of things when you add a person, and I'll show you what one of these lookups looks like just now. We'll go ahead and add a key person. Brings you to a page where you can narrow down the search criteria and enter information into any one of these fields, or you can just press search and return an entire.
Welcome to GoToWebinar, Web Events Made Easy.
This person with return value will make him a key person. It allows me to select what role he has on the project. And because he's a key person, it asks me to explain what his role is. And then once I add him, it'll generate a subpanel just like it did for these other people. And there he is right there, Dominic Nugent. When it brings forward a person into the proposal, it brings a bunch of different subpanels about that person, including what information is stored from them in the table with their contact information, email address, things like their Commons username if that's stored in the table. You can also add degrees for them by selecting a type and entering a description, the year that they got the degree in the school. For key personnel in particular, let me back up and show you how this looks for a principal investigator. For a principal investigator, it brings back the units that they're associated with, and you can also add additional units, both for the credit split, which you'll see below, and for routing purposes if people in additional departments need to approve this proposal before it gets submitted. And it also brings forth a bunch of yes/no certification questions for the person to answer, whether or not there's lobbying, conflict of interest, and things like that are typical certification questions on a paper proposal right now. And again, these questions are configurable so that you can add the questions that are relevant to your school when you set up casing. So for a PI and a co-PI, this information comes in and they can fill it out and answer the questions here. It brings forward their units, but again, you can add additional ones. For a key person, it's slightly different. It doesn't automatically assume that the key person needs to certify or that the key person needs to have unit details for the credit split that's listed below. But you can opt those people in. And the way that you do that is you can basically click the button that says Add Unit Details so that you can add a unit for this person or add multiple units for the person. Same goes with certification questions. You can opt in to having that person answer the questions prior to it being routed. One of the things about certification questions in particular is that the proposal can't be submitted into final routing without them being answered. It comes up as a validation error, so this is a way of making sure that everyone can do that. I'm going to go ahead and delete these right now so that I don't run into errors later. And one of the things you can do is you can opt to include the items for all key personnel without having to perform this exercise every time, or you can have it done on a person-by-person basis, which is what I'm doing right now. All of the units that are added through the people listed here as PIs, co-PIs, and key personnel show up in the combined credit split. The combined credit split allows you to show out the division and distribution of things like academic credit and F&A allocation, for instance, or even space. There are, in this case, you can see right here where someone is testing and adding columns just to make sure that that works. That's what those two are for. It ships with basically 4 columns, the recognition, responsibility, space, and one called financial. But there's the ability to have up to 8 columns for combined credit split. So you can kind of use this tab any way you need to for your school. You can also force it to add up to 100% or not. So if you're using one of these columns for an alternate reason and there's no need for it to add up to 100%, you can turn that flag off for that column so it doesn't do that. The special review page is the next one across the top. And this is where you can add information about research compliance items like human and animal subjects, other things that might need additional review beyond the proposal. And again, like all of the other places where there are drop-down lists, this is configurable.